I am so excited. We're here today with Twain Lockhart, who is a poultry consultant for Nutrina, and Twain brings quite a bit of experience to the table here. He has over 40 years of experience raising chickens. You studied animal husbandry, and I understand you also had a feed store, right?
Yes, for 17 years, and we
Wow.
specialize in poultry.
Okay. So, Twain, for first-time chicken owners, any advice that you can give for some really good breeds to start them out?
Yeah, it's really important that you start with the right kind of chicken. They're very different. There's a lot of breeds of chickens. Saying that all chickens are the same is like saying all dogs are the same. It's kind of absurd. Starting with the right chicken is going to ensure that you're going to be more likely to be happy with this hobby, and we want you to stay in this hobby for a while. This here is Spike. He is what they call a silky. He is actually a bad example. He's not a good beginner's chicken. A lot of people, the silkies kind of ruin the hobby for a lot of people. They're great chickens before anybody wants to put a hit out on me for being mean to silkies. I'm just going to tell you, but for a beginner, they're not a real good beginner's chicken. They don't lay a lot of eggs. They want to hatch everything they lay, which is, they call that very broody. They're not super cold hardy, and I'm just going to say it, Spike, they're not too bright, okay? I mean, they're not predator safe, is what I mean by that. So that would not be, the silky is definitely not a good beginner's chicken. You know, perfect your skills a little bit before you jump into these. If you have kids that want to go into 4-H and they want to show birds, that's a different thing. But for somebody in the backyard for pet chickens, I'm going to say probably America's favorite backyard chicken is a Rhode Island Red. That's a great beginner's chicken. The Plymouth Barred Rock is another great beginner's chicken. Both of those birds will lay about 250 big brown eggs a year. They're really friendly, they make good pets, they're reasonably intelligent, and they're not broody, so they don't want to hatch everything they lay. There's a lot of good breeds. The sex-linked breeds are very good as beginner's chicken, and that is a hybrid.
Okay.
And you're up around 300 eggs a year, very intelligent birds. So there's a lot of good beginner's chickens. I call them quarter vanilla ice cream chickens, and you're going to find that you may start with those, and then the hatcheries get your address somehow, and they start mailing you catalogs, and then you start getting exotic chickens, and guess what? A lot of people go right back to the quarter vanilla ice cream chickens. There's a reason why everybody has those chickens. They're really good chickens.
Okay. And so when you mentioned some of the layers, you mean you're talking about those that are going to be just, if it's somebody out there that's just wanting to have pet chickens that are going to lay eggs.
Correct.
So
The pet that
those-
makes you breakfast, yeah.
Okay.
They tame down real easily. Get them as chicks. They bond with you. You'll start getting eggs at about 24 to 28 weeks. You'll need to brood them in the house for the first roughly 6 weeks before they can go outside.
Okay.
And then they lay about 250 eggs a year, somewhere thereabouts. You'll get about 4 or 5 seasons out of them. The older they get, they kind of taper off in their egg production.
Sure.
So,
Okay. So for somebody that's looking at meat chickens,
okay, totally
so what
different.
kind of, right? So
Okay.
what kind of breeds would you recommend for that?
Right out of the gate, let me say I highly recommend you master laying hens before you do meat chickens. But you could probably, master may not be the right word. Get your feet wet with laying hens maybe a year before you do meat chickens. They're a little more delicate. The most common meat chicken is called the Cornish cross, and those are white. The white Cornish cross is probably over 99% of the chicken that we eat in the market or at restaurants. And they're very, very different than your laying hens. They're quite frankly, they're dumber than a bag of hammers. 8 weeks beginning to end, 56 days hatch to freezer is the recommended, and you really should restrict their diet, 12 hours on, 12 off. So they're a little more complicated. With your laying hens, you just free feed them. You give them baby food for the first 16 weeks, as much as they want, and then you go to a layer feed for the rest of their life.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
So, yeah, I don't want to scare anybody from raising their own meat birds, but I really do recommend you start with laying hens. So,
Now, you see the term when you're looking at different breeds, you'll see that term dual purpose. Can you explain what that
okay.
means?
Back in the day when they developed those breeds, they were dual purpose. Generally what they did is people would raise the hens, use them 4 or 5 years for their egg production, and then they would go in the crock pot. So they were dual purpose meant eggs and meat. Now some people will eat the roosters. Okay, that's fine too. But you're looking at, instead of 8 weeks for a Cornish cross, you're looking more like 6 months to get, let's say, a Rhode Island Red Rooster big enough to eat.
Gotcha.
So, by the way, after about 6 months, they become gumbo, soup, crock-pot chickens. They're not barbecue chickens. They'll be like a rubber chicken. They get real tough.
Okay. You also mentioned that term sex link. Can
Okay.
you explain that a little bit
Oh,
more?
I'm sorry. I should have expounded on that. Sex link is a hybrid or a crossbreed. And they call them a sex link because they can tell the breeds by the colors of I'm oversimplifying it, but they can tell at a glance if they're male or female when they hatch. They don't have to pay a vent sexer to sex those birds.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and the odds of you getting a baby rooster are reduced dramatically because they can tell at a glance if they're male or female.
Can you mix breeds together? Because a lot of people starting out in backyard chickens want a really beautiful, diverse flock.
Yes, you absolutely can. There is some exceptions. I'm not a fan of mixing bantams, which are the miniature chickens, with your standards. It can be done, but think of the kids that get picked last for dodgeball. They're going to get picked on by the big chickens. And then I'm not a fan of mixing your Cornish cross meat chickens with your laying hens. In fact, I highly recommend you don't do that.
Okay.
The laying hens will pick on them and dominate them. They won't let them eat like they're supposed to.
Okay. So a bantam, I know a lot of people are really interested in
Yeah.
bantam. So that's not a good idea.
The bantams are little and cute, but they're just not real functional. I'm not anti-bantam by any means. I used to show them. They just, for a beginner, they don't lay a lot of eggs. They want to hatch everything they lay. The eggs are real small, and they're not cold hardy, nor are they predator safe, generally speaking.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'd much rather see you start with some of the standard dual-purpose Rhode Island Reds, Plymouth Rocks, things like that, sex links.
So most people with backyard chickens, like I said, are looking for pets that are,
Right.
most of them, pets
Uh-huh.
that are laying eggs. And so when you're looking at the breeds, they're wanting something that are going to be friendly. So are all breeds really friendly?
No.
Or what?
The ones we talked about are the sex links, the Rhode Island Reds, Plymouth Barred Rocks are friendly, Australorps are friendly. There's plenty of friendly breeds. Some of the breeds are not as friendly. Things like white leghorns, it's actually leghorns is how you're supposed to pronounce it. They tend to be very flighty. They're not a bad chicken. They lay like gangbusters, but they don't tend to be as friendly as the other breeds. Kind of
Okay.
skittish.
Okay.
There's several, and those actually make a good ranch chicken. If you wanted a chicken that's going to run around on the farm and eat ticks and things like that, not so much a pet though.
Okay, okay. I was going to ask you about that as far as confinement.
Uh-huh.
Because a lot of times when you're living in the city, you're needing some birds that may or may not have to be a little bit more confined than having, acres to roam.
Right, right.
So are there some that are better with confinement?
Yeah,
others?
the ones we talked about do well in confinement, the Rhode Island Reds, and I keep going back to those, the Plymouth Barred Rocks, the Australorps, those all do well in confinement. You need a minimum of 4 square feet per chicken, and I mean ground square footage.
Right.
Otherwise, in the wintertime, they can start feather picking, and stress can be a big problem if they're overcrowded.
Okay. And speaking of winter, how important is climate when you're choosing a breed?
Well, all of these are cold hardy and heat tolerant. They're pretty versatile. They're
Okay.
definitely cold hardy, so for the Midwest and the Northeast, they do fine in that. If you're somewhere else where it gets real hot, you may have to provide a fan or ventilation in the summertime. But they do really well with that. In fact, I don't recommend heating the coops at all. Once they get to be feathered and they move outside, it's such a fire hazard to put a heat lamp on them outside, and they do fine. If you keep your chickens out of the elements, they do fine in the Midwest winter.
You touched on broodiness. Can you
Okay.
explain what that is?
Well, they want to be mom, okay? So you don't need a rooster to get eggs. That's my number one question. But they may decide to brood whether there's a rooster in the zip code or not. Well, that's not really a great trait because a lot of times if they're running loose, they'll go and hide someplace. And you think something ate her. Mary Ann went missing, so you have a funeral service and move on, and, you find her 2 months later under the house sitting on a bunch of rotten eggs. And it may take you several weeks to get her back into condition to lay eggs again. So
Okay.
it's not generally a good trait for most people.
Okay.
So they've kind of bred it out of most of your production breeds,
Oh, okay.
like the Rhode Island Red and the
Sure.
Plymouth Rock. They not too broody. It can happen, but it's not that common. Whereas your Bantams, like Silkies and stuff, they're really broody.
Okay. All right. If you're buying from, and most people are buying from a hatchery or a breeder, what are some things, or wherever you're getting your chicks from, what are some things that you may want to ask, or some things you should look for? Anything you can, or questions you should ask of them?
You mean of the hatchery? Most people probably are going to buy from a farm store, because the hatcheries usually require a minimum purchase of 15 to 25 chicks. And then so from that aspect, the farm store may or may not vaccinate. It just depends on if you want to go down that road or not.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. What do
Okay.
you recommend?
I personally like to get my chicks vaccinated for Merrick's.
Okay.
I don't get vaccinated for coccidiosis, though. Okay, I will either feed them a medicated chick feed to prevent the coccidiosis, or if they show signs, symptoms, I will give them a medication for the coccidiosis. Okay. But I generally do not get them vaccinated for that. Now, the hatcheries will not just vaccinate because it costs money. So unless you ask for it and pay for it, they're not going to vaccinate those birds. Merrick's is about 15 to 25 cents a bird to get them vaccinated for that.
Why do you feel that's important?
Because when we were showing birds, it was always your best bird that would always, seems like, lightning would strike that one and it would get Merrick's, and there's no cure for it. One day the chicken has trouble walking, and before you know it can't walk at all, and there's just nothing you can do for it. Okay. So, and we would have been nice had that bird been vaccinated for it.
Gotcha. Here's one for you.
Okay.
Should people name their chickens?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, why not? I mean, my wife names all her chickens, and I'm just going to say it. If my wife catches a chicken eating eggs, we have that chicken for dinner. Okay, so I mean, it doesn't matter. It kind of makes it kind of fun. Oh, Marianne ate an egg, so it was a crock-pot offense. Marianne, our chickens generally die of old age, unless they get caught eating eggs, and a rooster will only attack my wife once, with one exception. She and Spike hate each other, and he will attack her all the time, but because he is technically a Neutrina employee, he gets away with it. He gets a pass. So, it's up to you. I mean, don't beat yourself up, folks, if you lose some chickens. It's going to happen. Whether they be chicks or juveniles or adults, it's going to happen. And you will be surprised at how attached you get at these little guys. They really have a lot of personalities. The meat birds, not so much. They can be kind of mean, so you don't miss those. But your laying hens, I know people that literally have funerals for their chickens, and I mean, it's kind of a big deal when they die, because you do get attached to them. So I do recommend you name them, though. If they're going to be pets, they're the pets that make you breakfast. Have fun with this. You're going to enjoy them. They're very entertaining. People cannot get over how much personality they do have. You can have 4 sisters, and they have vastly different personalities. So, I mean, they're a lot of fun, and they're very relaxing, and then you get eggs.
Thank you. Well, we've been here with Twain Lockhart, who is a poultry consultant for Neutrina Products, who makes various kinds of food for all animals, including poultry. And so we want to thank you a lot for taking the time to speak with us today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.